Welcome to the Make the Movie Already podcast. This podcast is for you, otherwise busy creatives who can't seem to find the time to finish or start your passion project. Join me on this journey, however long it takes, to getting our projects done. Hello, Maria Rios here, your friendly, frustrated filmmaker, welcoming you to episode 8. For those of you just joining us today, I'm going to give you a quick background. I am a new podcaster and a newbie documentarian. I'm working on a film project that I've been stuck on for many years, and I'm using this podcast as a way to chronicle my progress and to keep myself accountable. So what you will hear is actually me working through some of the challenges that I've had with the goal of ending up with a finished film. As I mentioned before, I'm also a new podcaster, so I will be incorporating my experiences learning by doing in the podcast realm as well. Okay, so let's get started with episode 8. This episode will be dedicated to pre-production. And essentially story development. So I think moving forward, we're going to be spending a lot of time on story development. That's been the toughest thing for me. This is where exactly I went wrong with the project. And it's been the toughest challenge. As you may or may not know, my documentary is about a writer. And I won't say much more about it than that, because at this point, a big, huge background really won't be helpful, except to say that I started filming her story thinking I could find her story that way, which turned out not to be true. So last week, I introduced the Directing the Documentary book by Michael Rabiger. I have such trouble pronouncing his name. Michael Rabiger. I'm working with the 4th edition to help me work through the problem of story development. I decided to focus on 4 questions. And actually, they're bullet points from chapter 15, initial research, and the draft proposal. And these bullets are: get to know the whole scene so that you can narrow down to what is significant, communicate your motivations and purposes for making a film, and for making this film, actually. Develop a proposal indicating intended content, theme, and style so that you can try out your ideas on other people and raise funds or other support. Decide what the ultimate purpose of making the film should be. I think these 4 bullets are representative of being able to communicate what this film is about and are the first steps in being able to carve out a story. And so that's where I am. And so I was working from chapter 15, this research chapter, but also chapter I think it's 11, developing your story ideas. But this time around, this week, taking from what I did last week, I added chapter 10 and chapter 16 to the reading list. And I think this has rounded out the introductory reading, what I need to have percolating in my head to be able to solve my story development problem. So reading these 4 chapters was pretty helpful to me. I read them out of order. And that's largely because I'm already working on the film. And so I've actually gone through some of the processes outlined in some of these chapters. But all to say, these 4 chapters really provided me with some insight that for me led to a eureka moment. Now, very quickly, let me go ahead and summarize these chapters. Chapter 16 is research leading up to the shoot, which essentially introduced the dramatic curve and how to use the 3-act structure to organize really your documentary ideas. Chapter 15, as you know, is research and the draft proposal. So it's an itemized list, a pretty comprehensive list of steps for research for documentary, and it includes a template draft proposal, and it explains it in great detail. Chapter 11 is developing story ideas, which really provides a list of ideas that you can draw documentary stories from. Anything from history to news items, etc. I already have a story, so that was less new to me or less necessary, but it had some nuggets of wisdom that were really helpful. And chapter 10, recognizing artistic identity. Now, this one I kind of wanted to avoid, but in this chapter 10 is where I had that eureka moment and where I was able to kind of get clarity on what I was missing, what steps I was missing to effectively tell this particular story as a film. So what did I learn by reading these chapters, and where was that eureka moment? When did that happen? So the major takeaways for me are that my goal should be to develop a character-driven film. So the film in some way should outline how this person or this person's work moves through the earth, either physically or time-wise. But I've got to figure that out. The second thing is that I should keep in mind that I should try to think of this film, ironically, being able to convey its message without narrative. So maybe thinking of it as a silent film wherever possible, knowing the limitations of this because my subject is a writer. But I think trying to conceive of this film as a silent film would help me maybe think creatively towards articulating visually what this film should look like or what should accompany the narrative. I also thought it was interesting, and these are Rabiger's words. I'm probably going to mutilate them. Yeah, I'm definitely going to get it wrong because my notes are wonky, but the quote or the passage had to do with choosing between being a journalist or taking a journalistic approach versus taking an artistic approach, or one like a dramatist who gives chunks of dynamic life action and imagery. Now that's half of the quote, but what I think he's trying to say really is what he's trying to do is to encourage the reader to make art, to make poetry, to get the audience to feel, to really bring life to a documentary. And those are words I appreciate. The eureka moment, though, came for me in chapter 10 when I actually read through the whole thing, despite the fact that while perusing the chapter, I saw something about notating your dreams, and I don't know. I wasn't quite buying into that. But I read the whole chapter, and that chapter focuses on understanding yourself, how important it is to have knowledge of yourself and to practice self-inquiry so that you can know the nature of your art, so that you can know the nature of your artistic identity, so that when you're making films that you focus on what you care about. And I don't know, maybe to other folks that might be a no-brainer. But for me, doing that kind of prep work seemed awkward or out of place even, because I thought, well, don't you get your artistic identity after you've actually produced a film or after you've made the film? But here he is talking about developing your artistic identity and knowing this in advance. At least that's how I'm understanding it. And so the eureka moment comes with the realization that not having a well-articulated artistic identity may have been the biggest obstacle for me. You know, I've been lucky enough to have opportunities for professionals and mentors and other students, for them to be able to provide feedback to me on various parts of the film. In fact, I've heard that I actually do have a story already. And my response would be that it could be that I have a story already, but number one, I'm really not seeing it. And most importantly, I am not seeing the story I want to tell. This is not the story I want to tell. But I couldn't define what I wanted to say. And so there was the problem. And I felt so childish. I felt like it was so childish to say, well, you know, I have all of this footage and here's what I've presented and here's my sound edit. But this isn't what I want to say. You know, when I'm asked, well, what do you want to say? And I'm like, I am not sure, and I'm not sure how to get there. So I got lots of suggestions. But I think all along, this was all about, you know, being able to articulate in the movie my artistic identity, being able to point to the film and say, this is where my voice is, my vision is. And I just thought that would come from a series of neat shots or great interviews. But no, it has to come from that feeling. The audience needs to feel what is special about this story. And that is tied to knowing that artistic identity and being able to connect, at least in writing and through story development, being able to connect my artistic vision for the story, my artistic intent and identity with the building blocks of the story itself. So next steps for me are pretty clear. I will be spending some time on chapter 10 and working through the recommended exercises, which are interesting. I may or may not share them here because some of them will be quite personal. For example, there is an exercise involving a self-inventory where you write about major experiences in your life in which I was deeply moved to joy, rage, panic, fear, disgust, etc. And that might kind of lead into dangerous territory. I don't know. But I have to do this work to really dig deeply to find and articulate my motivations for filmmaking in general, and to find ties, very direct and clearly articulated ties to why I want to make this particular film. Meanwhile, I'll have some lateral tasks because I can't stop the train because I have so little time really to get all of my creative, artistic projects, completed in a week. I mean, I just have so little time to dedicate to this right now. But 10 minutes a day will have to suffice. And so part of this will be actually doing some work in other chapters to develop the story specifically based on some of the research that I've already completed, meaning going through my footage and finding themes that are salient, evaluating my my interviews and trying to find insights on the primary subject, again based on information I have, and I have a lot of it, so I can stay busy during the week with that. So it seems like now is a good time to start wrapping up. I'm actually turning into a pumpkin right now. It's been a long week and I've spent quite a bit of my creative time doing some reading and learning and writing and letting some of these ideas kind of percolate. Frankly, I feel like I'm a little bit lost because all that I've covered today really isn't new. I'm familiar with these concepts. It's just how I've applied them or how I haven't, or how I've conceived of them or how I haven't. And so I think putting it all together is starting to make sense to me in a way that's very different. I guess that's the best way I can say it right now. Before I ramble anymore, I will go ahead and say goodbye and promise myself that I will get through a lot of these examples and do some more writing in relation to this project. And my goal is to be able to share some of that next time around, and hopefully have some exciting for me, updates related to the filming of my project even. That may be ambitious because I frankly think that story development will be at least another couple of episodes. But I can't really move forward. I don't think I should really move forward until I have a solid plan. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be a solid plan involving the direction of this story. And that plan will inform what I shoot next. Actually, what I continue to shoot or film throughout the rest of this process. This piece, this story development piece, has been the weakest link in all of my projects, in all of this project, mainly with this project. So it's really important that I take my time with it and work all of these kinks out. I'm very excited about it. Thank you so much for listening, all four of you. Thank you. It's appreciated. And I am working through, both my film and this podcast. I'm looking forward to kind of making some improvements to make this easier on the ears, a little bit more organized and more consistently formatted. So thank you so much. Until next time. Please find me on socials if you can. I'm at Make the Movie Already podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So again, take good care, say hello, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.